if nobody has a problem, then it may be that the authors might like to share a part of the recording anyway. Okay, so welcome. This is the first writer's read, so I'm really excited that you all were able to hop on and join us for today. Really excited that Kate and Maggie decided to say, yes, we'll come and do the first one. That was really, really kind of both of them. So the event will eventually, hopefully, if we're all allowed out of our homes soon-ish, not just in the garden, we'll do live events from bookshops or from community centres as well. So if you're having any tech problems or you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat button. And what we'll do is we're going to start off with Maggie as the first reader, and then we'll have a Q&A session, and then we'll go to Kate. Kate will do her reading, and then we'll have a Q&A session, and then we'll have a general Q&A session toward the end. So I'm just going to read a little bit about something that Maggie sent me, her blurb that she sent me about what she's going to read from, and then we'll get going. So she's going to be reading from Shadows of the Past, and it's about decades separate the unearthing of a skeleton, the disappearance of 3 English schoolgirls, and a French village's guilty wartime secrets, and all are linked. So that sounds pretty juicy, doesn't it? Okay, Maggie, over to you. So Maggie Covett, thank you. Let's give her a round of applause. And maybe what we'll do just while Maggie's reading is including me, we'll pop ourselves on mute just so that we don't have any disturbances. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. I'm not on mute, am I? So that's fine. Yes, I just want to say a few words about the book before I actually start to read, to put it into context, because it's a very thinly, the heart of the book, the disappearance of the English schoolgirls in France, is a very thinly disguised memoir of my own time when I was a sixth former and went on a very peculiar holiday. Originally, it was just going to be that, and then it expanded in all directions so that the whole book is a saga, a thick one, as you can see, spanning 3 time periods. And if you can see the cover clearly from where you are, there's a framed photograph in the middle, and the girl in the framed photograph is actually me, age 17, with my French boyfriend, Jean-Claude, who became one of the main characters. So that's just to put it in context. We were all doing A-level French at school, and in those days, there was very little speaking involved. It was all reading, writing, learning grammar, reciting verbs, that kind of thing. And we thought that was absolutely fine. We learnt French rather the way we learnt Latin, until it suddenly became apparent that we were going to have to do a speaking exam at Leeds University. And really, none of us could speak French very well at all. So we decided that we'd go to France to improve our French. And we seized upon the opportunity of going to what was advertised as an international work camp. The blurb for this work camp was absolutely wonderful. It was very cheap, which was one thing, because none of us had much money, but deluxe accommodation, wonderful food cooked by their own chef, the opportunity to make friendly relationships with people in the village and all that kind of thing. It sounded wonderful. When we actually got there, we found it was very, very different from the way we expected. And the 1960s part of the book is practically word for word what happened to us, with a bit of embroidery here and there, but pretty much word for word. So the first extract I'm going to read is actually when the girls, thinly disguised accounts of myself and my friends, had arrived at the place, and we were being shown the accommodation, which absolutely horrified us. Just a second, I have it here. Yes, just to look at the cover again. Can you see that behind the young couple, there's what looks like a tunnel entrance? I hope you can all see that. Looks like the entrance to a railway tunnel. Well, that was in fact the way down to the dormitories, and that gave us a shock to begin with. I have to take my glasses off to read, sorry. So the chap in charge has just said, "This way to the dormitory, ladies." They trotted after him and stared in disbelief. About 100 yards from the building where they'd had dinner was the gaping mouth of a tunnel. A broken light fitting and what looked like an old fire bell were just visible through the overhanging foliage. Inside, a stone staircase led down into complete darkness. He reached for something on the wall, and the dim light barely lasted long enough for him and Kate to descend safely. Daisy and Ronnie were left to stumble blindly down the last few steps. God, it's blacker than the sticks. And what's that horrible smell? Drains, I should think, or sewers. We'd better catch up. I wouldn't want to get lost down here. He switched on another light, and he and Kate were disappearing down a stone passageway to the right. They stopped at the second of two doorways. Access to a third was blocked by an iron gate shaped like a portcullis, and nothing could be seen beyond. "Surely we can't be expected to sleep down here," said Ronnie. "It smells damp, and I've seen more cheerful dungeons." He'd shown them into a long, narrow chamber with a carved ceiling so low that they could almost reach up and touch it. The only natural light came from a small arched window at the far end. It looked out onto the forest, but its double row of thick iron bars had failed to protect the glass. At right angles to the two long walls stood a dozen bedsteads, most of them piled high with the possessions of girls who'd arrived before them. The three unclaimed beds near the window held only a thin mattress, rough grey blanket, and hard sausage-like bolster. Also provided were a deeply scored wooden table, a few rickety-looking chairs, and a rusty stove, cold and thick with dust. "Make yourselves at home," he called out over his shoulder, disappearing down the passageway. "I'll see you at breakfast." Kate was staring up at a line of iron hooks that ran the full length of the highest part of the ceiling. "I really need to hang up some clothes," she said. "They'll be creased enough already." "You mean you're actually planning to stay down here?" She tossed her head. "Of course not. This is ridiculous, but we don't have any choice tonight, do we? It's getting quite dark already. I just want something to leave in tomorrow." She picked up her vanity case. "I wonder where the bathrooms are." "I've got a horrible feeling that they're down the other end of the passageway," said Daisy. "You mean where they're from?" "I'm afraid so. We'd better take a look." I'll spare you the details of the sanitary arrangements, which were pretty hideous, but it's all described in huge detail in the book. Anyway, the girls settle in, and it isn't very long before they find all sorts of peculiar goings on. Again, pretty much drawn from what really happened. They discover that the chap in charge of the place is a crook with all sorts of enterprises going on, and that the work camp is actually just a front for his criminal activities. But what they can't work out is why everybody in the village seems not willing to help him, but helping him anyway. He seems to have some kind of hold over them, which they don't understand. And in fact, in the 1960s part of the book, they never find out why. In real life, neither did I at the time. I found out later on because I kept in contact with Jean-Claude, went back to visit, by which time my French was a great deal better, found a lot about the village and all the things that had happened during the German occupation, which didn't reflect well on most of the inhabitants, and why they were absolutely desperate to cover these up and very anti-stranger. They didn't like people in their village at all, really. And there's a lot about that in the first section of the book, when somebody stumbles into all this 20 years later, and the point when she finds the skeleton in the forest. However, I'll pass on to the second thing I'd like to read, which is where one of the girls, Daisy, hasn't gone out with the others because she's feeling ill. She suffers very badly once a month and is lying on her bunk, feeling dreadful, but just drifting off to sleep because she's taken some medication, when something wakes her up. The mixture had made her drowsy, and she dismissed the now familiar smell of Gauloise as a dream at first. It reminded her of Jean-Claude, and she stretched out languorously, wondering when she'd see him again. It was only when more smoke drifted towards her and someone coughed very close by that the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. A shaven-headed man with a gold earring was standing right outside, his back to the window. That alone would have been frightening enough, but he had a pistol tucked into the waistband of his trousers. What if he turned round and saw her? She pulled the edge of her sleeping bag up to her nose and crossed her fingers. After what seemed like a lifetime, there was a long, low whistle, evidently a signal of some kind, and the man hurried off. Daisy's heart leapt into her throat as she heard shouting, vehicle doors slamming, and the frantic barking of the guard dogs. Even worse, heavy footsteps were tramping down the passageway towards the dormitories. As her door was flung open, Daisy shrank down so far into her sleeping bag that she could hardly breathe, trusting to the gloom to conceal her presence. It worked. Someone entered, paused for a moment, and then withdrew. There was another low whistle, followed by a burst of activity. Merde, putain! Although the sound was muffled by the padded fabric around her ears, Daisy was aware of something being manhandled and dragged up the passageway. The manoeuvre was repeated several times before there was a loud clang. The last of the footsteps retreated, and a heavy vehicle revved up in the distance. More frightened than she'd ever been in her life, Daisy waited a full 10 minutes before emerging red-faced and dishevelled from the sleeping bag and throwing on the first clothes that came to hand. She tiptoed to the door. Everything in the passageway looked the same as before, but it took her even longer to pluck up the courage to mount the steps and peep outside. Eyes narrowed against the sun, she was relieved to see that the whole area was deserted. Only the fresh tire marks in the gravel bore witness to the fact that she hadn't overdosed on the mixture and dreamed the whole episode. So, I think I've probably had my 10 minutes, Lisa, I don't know, so over to you.
Okay, well, I wasn't timing. I was just actually really gripped. I didn't want you to stop. I was like, oh. And I love what you said about the, you know, that how you knew that people didn't really want their secrets to be, you know, unfold, that you had that sort of sense. Really brought me in. Does anybody else have any questions about for Maggie that you'd like to ask Maggie about what you just heard, or how she come to write the book, or anything else? Oh, you're on mute, Kate.
Sorry, guys, forgot to switch it on. The book you showed us, Maggie, is that the actual size of the published book?
Yes, so this is the actual book, yes.
How many pages is in your book?
About just a second. 402.
Oh, right.
Quite a doorstop.
And how long did it take you, Maggie, to write that?
Probably about 12 years.
Really?
Because I had the idea brewing for a long, long time about writing a memoir about that summer. My friends who were with me and I, even now, all these years later, we still talk about it every time we meet, because such strange things happen. And that was going to be it. It was going to be more of a novella. But then because the village and the people in it were so strange, I decided to go back and do a bit more digging. And I'd always vaguely kept in contact with Jean-Claude. And we spent a lot of time going around. He knew a lot anyway, because obviously his parents had been around during the occupation. And he told me a lot and introduced me to neighbours and so on. You know, I met a lady who'd been in a concentration camp and all sorts of things. And the main thing was that we'd been told that we were going to meet lots and lots of friendly people when we were there. Well, the boys were friendly, I'll give them that, with the teenage girls. But the older people, definitely not. You know, there was always a feeling that we were there on sufferance. And we didn't really know why. And because our French was so awful, as I've explained, all the French we'd learnt at school had been grammar and verbs and things. We couldn't really dig into it. So when I went back later on, having been to university and taken a degree in French and, you know, spent time working in France, I was a great deal more fluent. So I was able to ask all sorts of questions, interviews and so on. And the further I dug, it just got darker and darker and darker. And I went up to Paris as well and did quite a lot of research there in various museums and archives. And all the things that I've written about the section that deals with the occupation, all those events had actually happened to somebody, and I'd borrowed them for my characters and obviously mixed and matched as you do. So when I've given readings before, more extensive readings, people have sometimes said, oh, you know, I don't believe that, that's really overdrawn, or things didn't happen like that. And they did. Every single incident in the book happened to somebody, hideous though it may have been. So
does the village know that you've had the book is out?
Some of them do. I mean, the thing is that a few years ago when I was over there spending time with Jean-Claude and some of his family, I mentioned then that I was thinking of writing a book, and they were fascinated. They didn't personally have any dirty laundry, at least if they did, I didn't find out about it. And one of them actually said to me, well, you know, is there going to be romance in this book? And looked at me with Jean-Claude and thought, who's going to be the hero? And I'm, well, yeah. I mean, we're both married to other people by then, but we had our memories. And I mean, you know, well, it's his second wife now, and my husband know all about it and think it's hilarious, so that's okay. But there is quite a lot of romance in it. Some of it's embroidered, I'll grant you, but if you look at I actually brought out a prequel recently, this, Foreshadowing, and it's free to download on Amazon because it's quite short. And if anybody orders a copy of the novel from me, I throw one in as a freebie. But that's all about our time at school when we were in the sixth form. And it mentions the French assistant we had, who was the only real French person we'd ever met. We had her for a few weeks when we were in the sixth form. And she told us that the way we'd been taught was absolute rubbish. And if we wanted to increase our fluency, the best way was to find a French lover, because there's no substitute for pillow talk.
Okay.
There is a fair amount of that in the book.
It's a novel way of teaching French, eh?
Well, it is, you know, as opposed to learning about 16th century playwrights and conjugating verbs. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say that when we all went over there, if somebody had stopped us on the metro and asked us to conjugate any verb of their choice in the past historic, we wouldn't have batted an eyelid. But when it came to going into a cafe and ordering drinks, we were floundering. Yeah. It was all right, you know, to say what we wanted, but if the waiter asked us a question, I hadn't got a clue what he was talking about. Yeah. And as I said, it's because when I was at grammar school, French was taught rather like Latin. Very different now, I'm glad to say. Very, very different.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie, for reading. So your book is available on your website and from Amazon, is that correct?
Yes, or by sending me a personal message, certainly.
Okay. Yeah. Does everybody know how to contact Maggie? Do you want to just give a shout out to your website?
Sure. Well, it's just my name, which you can all see on the screen, maggiecovett.co.uk. The only thing you've got to be careful of is make sure it's Covett with 2 B's. not Corbett like Ronnie Corbett, Cobbett. And you know, if anybody sends me a personal message and they want a signed copy, I'm very happy to send one, and also throw in a printed version of this. From Amazon, it's free, but it's only as a download. So if you wanted a printed version, I have them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you.
Well
Let's
done, Maggie.
yeah, let's give Maggie a round of applause. Yeah, thank you
Very much.
Okay, so Kate, over to you now.
Yeah.
So Kate is going to be reading from her book, Life in the Gorbals, and she says that it has been described as a feel-good, hysterical journey. So looking forward to something that makes us feel good and maybe makes us laugh at the same time.
Okay.
So, yeah, over to you, Kate. Thank you.
Okay, so a little bit of background for this too, as Maggie did with hers. This one, Life in the Gorbals, is the trilogy, and that is the result of these 3 novellas, which came first. The Wit and Wisdom of Bobby Chicken Legs Muldoon was first, then it was Life and Love in the Gorbals, then Fame and Fortune. And I decided that I would put it all into the one. So it's exactly the same as the 3 novellas, only in the one trilogy. It's written in the Glasgow dialect, so anybody that's on today who can't understand, just stop me, I'll try and explain what the words mean. The characters are Bobby Chicken Legs Muldoon, and Bobby gets bullied at school because he's so thin, he's got bright red carrot hair, really quite an unhappy little boy when he was at school, but he's got real, how do you explain it, he's really fantastic sense of humour and a determination to succeed at whatever it is he wants to do. So he holds his own. He lives with Ma, Ina Muldoon, who has got OCD in those, it's set in the 60s, so it wouldn't be called OCD then, it would probably just be, she hates dirt. And she even wears rubber gloves when she goes to shop so that she doesn't get germs on her hands. She's a nag, she doesn't give Bobby a minute's peace, she's always complaining. And Bobby's father, his dad, is called Alec, and he has a terrible time with Ma. He really does. He has to really keep his mouth shut or he gets into a lot of trouble. But he's a lovely, quiet man. And the reason I chose the 2 sort of really contrasting characters was to give Bobby something to work both ways on, if you see what I mean. Lovely relationship with his father, really volatile relationship with his mother. This bit that I'm going to read is one of my favourite bits, and it mentions Jeannie in this bit, and Jeannie is Bobby's little girlfriend that he meets at the Barrowland Ballroom, and he and Jeannie get together. So just to clarify that, when Jeannie is mentioned, you'll know who I'm talking about there. So this is when Ma decides she needs to get her hair done. And it kind of doesn't go the way a normal visit to the hairdressers would go. Ma decided she needed her hair done. So she goes downstairs to Big Bella. Bad move, because Bella's no a real hairdresser. She's a dog groomer. She was away for ages, and when she got back, she looked as if she'd stuck her finger in an electric socket. What a state. Her hair was just a big, massive frizz. When she looked in the mirror, it was like a bomb going off. I was trying not to laugh, but it was hard because she looked like a giant brill pad. Father did his usual and tried to make a bad situation better. It's no that bad, Ina. It'll maybe be less big if you wash it. Maybe it'll go back to the way it was. She just looked daggers at him. If you have nothing sensible to say, Alec Muldoon, then I suggest you shut it. What do you think the word perm means? No idea, Ina. Well, I'll tell you. This monstrosity on the top of my head was created by a permanent wave kit, and that means I'm going to look like this for the next 3 months. I was just trying to help, Ina. Ma's got a scary, you are a stupid idiot look, and she gives Father one. He shuts his mouth quick. Ma, can I make a wee suggestion? Maybe it would help if you ironed it. She curls up her top lip when she's confused. Up it went. Did I hear you right? Did you just say I should iron my head? No, your head, Ma, your hair. I read it in a magazine once. It said it makes it all straight and shiny looking. You put your hair in between 2 sheets of brown paper, you lie it on the ironing board and you iron it. Jeannie says it really works. It's just a suggestion, Ma. I couldn't understand why she thought I was taking the piss. I'm going to kid on, I never heard that. Now here's another suggestion, you bugger off. Next thing, she slams out the door, cursing and swearing. Then we hear all this shouting and screaming for downstairs. We run down and there's Ma. Outside Big Bella's flat, down on her hands and knees, screeching through the letterbox, demanding her money back. Bella calls Ma an ugly-faced cow, and with that, Ma goes storming back up the stairs, screaming that she's going to stuff the perm curlers down Big Bella's throat. What a carry-on. When we get back up the stairs, Ma's at the kitchen table, muttering under her breath. It's best for Father and me to stay out of the way, because we should really shut ourselves in the living room. A wee while later, she's screaming like a banshee. Alec, Bobby, get in here and give me a hand. When we go in, there's Ma with her head on the ironing board. She can't move because of a big chunk of hair stuck round the iron. The iron stuck to the brown paper and the brown paper stuck to the cover. There's smoke coming out her head and it's stinking. She goes mental. Excuse me. Father and me are staring at her, trying not to laugh. You pair are as much use as a chocolate ashtray. Didn't just stand there, turn the bloody iron off. I pull out the plug and she staggers to the table, still attached to the iron. She's half greeting, half screaming. Get the scissors, Alec! Get this iron off my head! Father cuts away at her hair. It was a mess afore, but it's worse now. There's a big bald patch on one side and a great big frazzled chunk sticking out the other side. Now Ma's sitting whimpering like a wee wean. I want to laugh at the state of her, but I can't. If she sees a hint of a smile on my face, she'll no be long and wiping it off. All I can say is it was a big Bella balls up. There we go. Excuse me.
That was just priceless, Kate. Thank you so much. Brilliant. So you're right. The way you write, I mean, you certainly are showing us all of the action there.
Yeah.
Just everything. We're right there in the room with all of that going on. Amazing. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Kate about her book, or
a comment, really?
Or a comment, yeah.
No, just that my late mother-in-law would have loved it. She was a Glaswegian.
Oh, was she, Maggie? Oh, she would have loved it then, yeah.
She would, yeah.
Yeah, Bobby gets up to lots of different antics in the book. And we actually, I mean, Helen, who's on today, hi Helen. Helen and all the girls in the novel pool writing group was where I started my writing career, really. I hadn't thought about writing a book when I joined them. And I got great support from Helen and everybody else. And eventually I went on to think, well, I'm from a drama background. Why don't we make it into a play? And we did a 40-minute play in Gorbals to open it up to what I hoped would be a big stage show eventually. And just before lockdown, excuse me, I got to the stage where I had not secured the funding, but secured 9 theatres to take the show.
Wow.
And then, bang.
Wow. Wow. Well, it hopefully come, hopefully,
Excuse me.
hopefully it's to come, right? Hopefully
Yeah, well,
it's to come.
hopefully.
Yeah, no, but it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, thank you
you.
so much. Thank you. Yeah.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Why do you choose to write it in a dialect rather than I just wondered.
Well, I went to college in Glasgow, so Glasgow is somewhere that I really love. I love the whole atmosphere of the place, and I spent a lot of time there. I don't really know why I did that, Molly.
Maybe it just came out like that.
I don't think it would have had the same effect if it was written just in straight English, to be honest. I think from a characterization point of view, it led to, you know, the dialect, and it gave me more of a chance of introducing characters who had real guts, and rather than just mother and father or mum and dad. Mo and Father sounded right.
Yeah.
And then when I chose Bobby's name, that fitted really well as well. So Muldoon, you know, let's have him chicken legs. All the comedy really just warranted the dialect. I don't think
a child like that brought up in the Gorbals in the 60s would not have received English.
No.
Still wouldn't.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I wasn't brought up in the Gorbals. I was brought up in the Falkirk area, but it doesn't change the fact that when I first experienced Bobby, I absolutely recognised his voice and the voice of Mo and Father. So I actually hadn't thought about this before, but that was an interesting question that Molly asked there, because I will never know, but I wonder how I would have responded if they had been speaking standard English. I don't think it would have been the same response, because I think I would have understood it as a sort of almost a study of that situation and that sort of life, but I wouldn't have heard the people speaking for themselves. And that's what you do here when you dip into the world of Bobby. You hear them speak for themselves, and that's the beauty of it. You believe it. You're straight in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
You know, it's I'm very proud of Bobby, to be honest, because as I was saying, when I joined the novel pool at first, I was just dabbling, and that's where my Scottish dialect stuff came from. It wasn't at Helen, I was dabbling in poetry, wasn't I, with you guys? And every week when we brought our submissions along, I was just bringing a little Glasgow poem and a wee bit of dialect here and there. And I suppose, to go back to Molly's question, maybe that's my answer, that it started with the novel pool and with the Scottish poetry. So it kind of just led on to, I'll write a book and I'll keep to what I've been doing. So yeah, I suppose I've just answered your question for you, Molly, there.
I must agree with Ian that it would lose all the rich comedy that's there. It's when a writer writes about a poor area like the Gorbals, like Liverpool, or any port where there are poor people, especially where there's an Irish heritage, not only is there tragedy just under the surface, children dying and deprivation, but there's also rich comedy, because that's how they deal with the difficulties of their lives. And it just would not have had the oomph, the impact, the hilarious comedy without the dialect. And I love listening to people who speak it and whose experience is that.
Yeah.
Well, I got a review, I think it was on Goodreads, that said, thank you to the author for not painting the Gorbals the way some people actually see it, as a drug-infested poverty-stricken place, and thank you for keeping it so upbeat and painting the characters, as Suzanne's just said, colourful, positive, didn't have very much but got on with their lives, you know. And I think that was a big compliment for me, that I had managed to do that without, you know, I mean, there wasn't a mention of Frankie Vaughan's visit when it was so drug infested they had to pull someone in who was a celebrity to try and get rid of the drug addicts, you know, and that happened. And when I was doing all my research, a lot of the people on the Only Way is Gorbals website, they were such a help to me to tell me what it was really like. These people on that website actually lived in the 60s in the streets where Bobby is based. So I got it firsthand from them about how they were just full of resolve to make it a happy community, and they all shared everything and borrowed sugar, and all that's gone, I think, now, hasn't it? You know, a lot of it anyway.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
I saw the play in Made in Stirling.
Oh, did you, Deborah?
And I worked just as well as a play. It was really good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't think the play would have been the same if it was in a different dialect.
No.
Definitely not.
We had some lovely actors in Made in Stirling, didn't we? Gillian McNeil, she used to be in Take the High Road. She played Bobby's mother. And that young boy that you saw, Deborah, in Made in Stirling, he's now moving on, and he's been accepted for the Dance School of Scotland to do the musical theatre course. Cool. So he's done really well, as you know. So yeah, I'm hoping we can bring it to life again and maybe get some funding. But 36 pages of funding needed for Creative Scotland to get a bit of funding, and I'm not sure in this climate whether this is the right time to apply.
Oh, I don't know. I think something that brings us into humour, I think would definitely get my thumbs up, because I think we all need that sort of, you know, love, and also a reminder. What you've done is, as you say, you've painted the picture of a community, but you've invited us into that community. And one of the things I think that's come out of the pandemic is the community has been missing in our lives for so many years, and we've all realized and recognized, we have all of this, you know, we can travel and we can do all of this and we have all this freedom, but we're missing community. We're missing that contact with the people that we live with. Thank you so much.
Would everybody mind if I just mentioned
Buttercup has a question.
Well,
have you? Sorry,
just more a thought in terms of what you're talking about in terms of like performance and connecting and all that kind of stuff, because obviously right now no live performance, well, no live in venue performance anyway, and I still wouldn't take it as a given that we're going to have much of that before the end of this year. There'll be some, I'm sure. I don't know there'll be much though, but random thought, maybe interesting to yourself, Kate, in particular, because obviously Bobby is a story that has been brought to life. It has been, you know, acted out and performed. The PBH Free Fringe, which is the original Free Fringe, not the kind of kiddie-on one that came later, had a couple of messages back and forward with them. So I've got a wee advance kind of inkling, but now they've put it out as a public post that they're seeking expressions of interest / applications for people who would be interested in doing something with them, either online or if they're allowed to do the usual sort of in-venue performances. So it just came back to mind there that maybe even a sort of, I don't know, a sort of Bobby read through or whatever, you know, with 2 or 3 people or whatever, you know, just in terms of a way of widening that out to a larger audience. And of course, the beauty of online performance, I have found through what we have done, is that it's not always about who is there in the moment as you go out live. If it's done through the likes of Facebook Live or Instagram Live, it's about the numbers of people who then pick it up afterwards. You know, and you see the reach, the interactions, the comments, and the reactions just go up and up and up. You know, so I just might be interested in PBH Free Fringe.
I can maybe, Yeah, I will do. Thanks, Ian.
Brilliant.
And if it's okay with everybody else, can I just mention that this is my
Yes, please
latest
do.
book?
Yes.
This is a far cry from Bobby. My whole career has been as a personal development consultant for the last 3 decades. And I've been running my own business, and I've just retired. I retired at the start of lockdown. So I thought, why not? Why waste all of that skill, I suppose, if you like, or experience of teaching? Why not record it in print? So this is my first of a series, I hope. This is on communication skills, and it's all of what I would teach in a classroom. Basically, it's a workbook, and it allows you to follow your own progress and write an action plan of your future communication and what you would like to improve, make more effective, whatever. So hopefully this will do okay. It only came out in December and it's selling pretty well. So
is that on Amazon, Kate, or from your
that's now
website?
on Amazon. Yes, you can.
Okay.
And I've just spoken to Duncan at Lamfanon Press, who published this, and he's going to put an ebook up next week as well.
Brilliant.
I know it's a workbook, and I was worried about that, thinking, well, you can't write on a computer screen, but if you have a notebook beside you, it's still possible to work through.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an ebook. And the feedback I got from one of the head teachers at Perth High who reviewed it for me, she said, get it out for kids online because they prefer that. So hopefully that'll give me more sales as well. It's quite slow at the moment, but it's only just out. So fingers crossed that this goes okay.
Okay.
That's
brilliant.
Me.
Thank you so much. Thank you
for listening. Thank you very much for
I think this has been lovely. This sort of, I mean, we're all our square boxes in our own little living rooms or wherever we happen to be. But I think it's felt very cozy. It's felt very intimate. Kate, thank you. Kate Trout, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking me, Lisa. Thanks very much, guys, for listening.
You're welcome. And it's just sort of, so I think if we can create more of this dialogue, writers supporting writers and audience supporting writers, and bringing more people in, so our readerly friends and our people who are interested, that would be great.
Are you only doing it once a month, Lisa?
Well, yes, I don't want to bite off more than I can actually chew. So I'm starting this once a month. So the next one is going to be on April the 18th. And we have Mary Turner Thompson, who's just, so she was author of The Bigamist, and she's just published The Psychopath. And we have the awesome Suzanne Edgerton, who's here in her living room, and she's going to be reading from her work as well on April the 18th. So we'll be publishing. So if you've enjoyed today, if you think other people would enjoy this sort of format, to come along and hear writers read from their work. I think there's nothing like hearing a writer read from his or her book or his or her poetry. I think just, you hear something else that you don't hear, obviously, when you're reading from it. So if you please do share, please do make comments on the Writers Who Read page and invite people along. And as I mentioned earlier, this has been videoed, so I will share it with Kate and Maggie. We haven't got any plans to publish it more widely, but we might. So if anybody on here says, please don't include my name or please exclude me from that, then please PM me and I'll make sure that you are excluded. If we can, we'll figure that out technically. She says bravely. So we have been we're coming up for sort of just about 5 minutes to 5 from my watch, so I'm not sure how everybody's tummy is, if you're all getting ready to have afternoon tea or an early dinner or a glass of gin and tonic. But does anybody have anything they want to contribute before we all leave for today? Yes, Suzanne.
May I say to Kate, please, for goodness sake, kill that person who told you didn't have a good face for video. I think you've got a great face for video.
Oh, thanks.
Your interpretation of your writing was terrific. You come across wonderfully well, and for goodness sake, I wish I had an impressive face for video. And just forget it. What is it called? Forget it.
Thank you. For those that didn't hear my story at the beginning, it was when I went to drama college and they said, don't ever think about going into television because the camera hates your face.
Charming.
Well, I had a similar thing, not about face, but about my voice. So when I was years and years and years ago, when I was auditioning at the Guildhall, I was from Essex, and they said, well, you'll have to get rid of your accent, because you have to speak proper,
Oh.
So now I speak the way I speak. And years later, I auditioned at the BBC because they were looking for an announcer for the clothes and all the rest of it, and it was at that time that I had actually thought, I want to start my writing career, but I need to earn a living, and making documentaries is too sort of difficult to be writing at the same time. So an announcer job would be perfect. So I went through the announcer job and they saw me several times, and then it came down to between me and one other person. And the reason I didn't get the job was because they said I was too posh. I was like, but I'm
Too posh for BBC.
I could have done it like that.
Yeah, you just had to ask.
Nobody bleeding told me. Yeah, so accent is everything, right? All right, so I'm going to say goodbye. So if you've read Kate's work, if you've read Maggie's work, if you're reading or planning to read my work, please make sure that after you've read that you do post a wee review, because it does help. So yeah, just a little plug there for all of us to and thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lisa.
For organising.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, and thanks everyone for coming on today. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I was
Thank
late.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.